Thanks for staying with us. Last week, Thursday, Wits University reached an agreement with its SRC that approximately 100 students who owed the university less than 150,000 rand in fees would be allowed to register for the 2025 academic year. The parties undertook to secure funding, and plans were afoot to help them register by the end of today. Days ahead of the agreement, there was a story about some postgraduate students who embarked on a hunger strike because they were not allowed to register, and about 3 weeks before, the university said it secured around 600 million rand in funding to help 800 students in the missing middle, a cohort of students who are not funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. And remember, we even had one of those students here on the show and said we'd try to get the university in order to understand exactly what's going on here. So this is that moment then we get to understand from the university's side as to what exactly is going on. And we speak to the Director of Communications for Wits University, Shirona Patel. Shirona, thank you so much for your time this evening. So when we were speaking to the student, for example, one of their representatives last week, they were talking about the fact that they're postgraduate students, they do want to be registered and all of that. I want to get to that in just a moment, but I want to start with this process, right, of these hundreds of students that have been registered today. And I wonder, how far are you with that process and if everyone is now sorted?
Thank you. So the agreement that was reached was that anyone who owes 150,000 rand or less would be allowed to register, and that they would receive funding from both the Wits Hardship Fund and the Wits SRC Fund. Now, the Wits Hardship Fund is worth about 28 million rand, and these are funds that we put together specifically to assist students to register and to find emergency accommodation. Now, initially, we had allowed students who owed 10,000 rand or less to register. We then took this amount up to 100,000. As of today, we've got 99% of undergraduate students that are registered. Like you correctly said, postgraduate students, we on about between 75 and 80%, but postgraduate students are registered throughout the year. So there are 3 more intakes, and they can register in May, in July, and again in September. The funding we received, we worked with the SRC. We raised about 11 million rand in the last 2 weeks, and that's really to secure spaces for undergraduate students at university, particularly returning students. As far as postgrad is concerned, we said that as we'll put all the names onto a funding portal, and as funding becomes available, it will then be directed to postgrad students.
And I want to stay with the undergrad for just a moment, right? Because we had a conversation here on the show with NSFAS, and they were talking about the fact that some of the, undergrads, those who would be registering for the first time and those who are coming back, they did speak to universities to say that while they're still trying to reconcile their books, they then are going to be accepting some of the risk, and they then are saying that the universities can be able to assist some of these students. Has that been the case with you as well?
Yes, and that was before NSFAS even told us that. So anyone who qualified for NSFAS or was eligible for NSFAS or was on NSFAS last year and who passed, we've allowed them to register from the start. So that hasn't been an issue. For Wits, we've got about 38,500 students as our total capacity. Out of those, we've already registered 25,000 undergrads and about 12,500 postgrads. So there's still about 500 postgrads that will register throughout the year. As far as NSFAS is concerned, we've got about 10,000 or so students on NSFAS. And those students are not the ones with the issues or the problems. They may have queries. There may be some who've lost their NSFAS because they haven't passed, etc. But the NSFAS ones haven't really been, they've had queries, but it's not the problem. Again, we go to the missing middle problem. So if we have 26,000, say, students at Wits on some form of financial aid, scholarship or bursary, we've got about 5,000 who can pay their own way. We're still sitting with that missing middle problem of 5,000. And when the Deputy Minister visited yesterday, he agreed that they had other solutions on the table, for example, a NSFAS loan. But that needs to be implemented and put into gear, hopefully before next year, so that takes care of the missing middle. From Wits' side, we've done whatever we can to help those in the missing middle. And like you correctly said, 63 million rand cleared the debt of 800 students about 3 weeks or so ago, allowing 800 students to register. Every year, we administer about 1.8 billion rand in scholarships, funding, and bursaries. And together with the hardship fund of 28 million and 11 million rand from the SRC fund, which we matched rand for rand, we've enabled as many academically talented students to register as possible. Now, when it comes to postgrad funding, there's, again, as many as we can will register, but they can register throughout the year. And we believe that those at the undergraduate level who are the first in their homes to go to university to attain a degree are probably those who should be prioritized from our side.
So, Shirona, let's get to the hunger strike story, right? Because we were in conversation here with one representative of these students who were saying that they should be allowed to register because they feel that for them this is, an opportunity that is missed by the university, quite upset about the fact that they're feeling excluded by this entire process. How many of these students were on hunger strike, according to the university?
So from what we can gather, and based on what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, there have only been 2 individuals who have been on a hunger strike, and not hundreds as was reported elsewhere, and one other who called into a radio station that we haven't been managed to locate. The 2 mature individuals who are on a hunger strike are not registered students, and they're not part of the SRC. They each have 2 degrees or qualifications from Wits University. The individual who was on a few days ago, she has 2 degrees and she now wants to study for a master's degree. She also has worked as a journalist and as a spokesperson, I'm told, for about 10 years or so. She was the SRC president in 2012 for a few months. So she's got 2 qualifications. She has worked for 10 years or so and is still now demanding to be registered for 3rd qualification. The individual who was on a hunger strike with her has an undergraduate BA degree, has studied a postgraduate diploma in governance, so has 2 qualifications from Wits, and is now demanding to study for an LLB. Now, from Wits' side, we're just asking the question, is it fair to prioritize 2 students with qualifications and work experience over those who are just trying to make it through their 1st degree?
Have you engaged with them?
Yes, so we've had the Deputy Dean has engaged with them on more than one occasion, and our Campus Health and Wellness Center, the head of the center, which is in the same building in which they were in, has been checking on them regularly as well. And we've had people popping in to just check on their well-being. So I think they have engaged with the Deputy Dean. And
so they're still on strike?
Yes. They have. He engaged with them today. He engaged with them before as well. So the Deputy Dean has been speaking to them, but we can't give them what they want. And if you put it into a different context, you and I may have a degree each, and now we decide we're going onto a hunger strike because we want another degree. We really don't think that that's fair. So we are looking out for their well-being. We are checking in on them, but it's not something that we can grant. If we do it for them, we have to do it for every student who wants to study further, and we just don't have the resources for that. If we do want free education, which is what the 2 persons on a hunger strike are demanding, then we need to have a national conversation. We need to bring in government. We need to bring in the private sector. We need to consider other sources of funding because the university itself cannot carry that burden. We are owed between 500 million and R1 billion at any time in debt. If we continue on that trajectory and we say, well, we are writing off all bad debt, it means the university doesn't become sustainable in the next 2 years.
It does.
So I think we need to balance it as far as that goes.
As you say, it does really, warrant a bigger conversation now because certainly it seems that this is an issue that's bigger than just your institution. So in the meantime then, I know you're saying you're looking after their well-being, but what are you going to do? Because I suppose you can't have this situation go on forever. At some point, there's got to be a resolution. How then are you seeing this one play out?
So we are, it's not like we're not engaging with them. We are engaging with them. And we also work through the SRC and the official postgraduate student association. And those are the 2 bodies that represent both undergraduate and postgraduate students. Like you said, we did reach an agreement with the SRC, and we continue to work with the Postgraduate Association. We continue to try to raise funding for students, but it's not a burden that we can bear alone. You know, and we do look at other sources of funding, whether it's from government, from the private sector. We need to think about the sector more widely as well. We've got 26 higher education institutions, and the Deputy Minister, rightly so, said yesterday we need to look at an expanded higher education sector to ensure more access for more students across the sector, and that includes TVETs, post-school education and training facilities, etc. So I think from our side, if we grant or make an exception for 2 people who have qualifications and work experience, we need to do that for all the postgraduate students or anybody who wants to study. We can't offer free education on our own, although it's an ideal that we would love and that something that we would work towards. We can't clear all historic debt. That would make us unsustainable, and we'd have to close down in 2 years. And the last thing I'd want to say on financing is that Wits is a non-profit organization, so any additional funding that we have goes back into the academic project and is committed to students. So we don't make a profit at all.
Shirona, it sounds like, as you say, a broader conversation is needed on this one because there's a catch-22, as you say, for yourselves here, and also you then have students as well. There's just so much going on, but I wonder what does this expanded higher education sector in practical terms would then look like, especially for the department. But I appreciate your time and your right of reply here on the show this evening, because really there was a lot of confusion last week when we had this conversation. So now just trying to get to understand exactly what's going on here. So we'll continue then to keep tabs on the story. That was the Director of Communications for Wits University, Shirona Patel.